We're calling this meeting of the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education back to order. Moving on to item 4.1, the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led tonight by Secretary Superintendent Aguilar.
Please stand. Ready? Salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item 4.2, the broadcast statement, which will be read tonight by student member Eng Olson. Before she reads the broadcast statement, we want to take an opportunity to warmly welcome our student board member Eng Olson. This is a new role for her, and this is her first board meeting. And I have to tell you, our student board members are incredibly hardworking, being here long hours throughout the course of the year. We are grateful for her service, and if you'll please join me in giving her a warm round of applause and welcome.
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being recorded in its entirety and will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air Sunday, August 4th at 9 o'clock p.m. and Wednesday, August 7th at 11 o'clock a.m. and also webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. We welcome members of the audience to address the board. Please complete a speaker form located in the back of the community room and give them to our communications representative along with any handouts you may have for the board prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please limit comments during public comment to items that are not on the agenda. If you do comment on an item that is on the agenda, we will ask that you please defer your comments until your item comes up on the agenda. Please also turn off your cell phones and place them on silent or vibrate.
Thank you, Student Board Member Eng Olson. Item 4.3, our Stellar Student Recognition. Tonight's Stellar Student Recognition will be done by our Vice President, Board Member Wu.
Thank you. I understand that Mr. Rohat Jawar from Kennedy High School, who is in recognition tonight for his 2019 National Speech and Debate Champion, will not be here. He just turned ill shortly before the meeting, so I would like to bring him back for the next meeting.
We would be honored to do that. We were incredibly proud to see him receive national recognition for his incredible talent and dedication to speech and debate.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 5.0, announcement of action taken in closed session.
No announcements out of closed session, Madam President.
Thank you. Item 6.0, agenda adoption. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Student board member preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Moving on to item 7.1, approving resolution number 3093 to support the Schools and Local Communities Funding Act. Tonight, I was hoping to present this wonderful resolution with my board colleague, an ally on this effort, Board Member Mai Vang. Unfortunately, Board Member Vang is attending, or fortunately, attending the graduation of her sister this evening, and so sent her regrets. In presenting this resolution, I think it's important to note that we know that in California, we were once the leader in public education. Across the state, if not the country, Sacramento saw significant investment that is just not happening today. In fact, as a state, California is so underfunded post-passage of Proposition 13 in 1978 that we find ourselves in the dubious position of being 41st in the nation. What that means is essentially it's a zero-sum game where we are always put in a position where we are fighting over a finite set of resources instead of seeing the necessary investments to lift student achievement and ensure that we are able to adequately compensate the wonderful employees that we have throughout the district. This resolution tonight is presented to support the Schools and Local Community Funding Act. I'm going to read a bit from the resolution and then ask two of our wonderful community partners to come up and say a few words in accepting the resolution. Whereas since the passage of Prop 13, school funding in California has experienced severe limitations in what was once the main source of funding for schools, the property tax. Whereas Prop 13 created a loophole in the system which permits major commercial and industrial properties to avoid regular reassessment. Whereas per pupil support, which relies on state funding, has declined from the top 10 in the nation to the nation's bottom 10. Whereas California has the 5th largest economy in the world, but is the 41st in the nation in per pupil funding. Whereas school funding in California is $1,961 per pupil less than the national average, while California's cost of living is among the highest in the country. Whereas public schools in California face challenges in providing an equitable and fair education for a student population with vast differences in language, income, and other factors. Whereas the University of Southern California has identified that nearly 80% of the revenue from Schools and Communities First Act will come from just 8% of large properties. Whereas the School and Local Communities Funding Act is on the November 2020 ballot and could provide at least $5.3 billion annually for K-14 schools. Now therefore be it resolved that the Sac City Unified School District Board of Education endorses the Schools and Community First Funding Act for a ballot measure in November 2020. And at this time, I would love to invite Nancy Zong from HIP, who's been an incredible advocate in the community for many years, and Robin Muchler from SEIU Local 1021. I do want to say that we know right now that polling indicates that this resolution, that this initiative faces a significant uphill battle. And yet we know that we are under-resourced and ill-equipped to meet the needs of our students. It's incumbent upon all of us to roll our sleeves up, get to work in partnership to ensure that we are advocating for this critical funding. And I'd like to invite you to say a few words.
Awesome, thank you. Good evening, Board President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. My name is Nancy Zhang, and I'm the New Development and Communications Director for Hmong Innovating Politics. Thank you for your support for this resolution supporting the Schools and Communities First Act. I first want to recognize how difficult of a year it's been for our district. We want to applaud the courage of our brothers and sisters in labor who were steadfast in their commitment in fighting for working families. We also acknowledge the members of the board who tried to mend bridges and rebuild trust. The challenges ahead for the district are many, and we are under no delusions about the distress that exists. However, HIP fundamentally believes that much of the conflict, much of the distress, much of the fiscal uncertainty is in large part due to the culture of scarcity and divestment of public resources from education created by Proposition 13. We hope that coming together in support of Schools and Communities First is a pivotal first step in rebuilding trust, improving transparency, and working together to refocus on equity. You are already taking trailblazing steps by passing the resolution, but know that the road ahead for Schools and Communities First Act will be difficult. Already, the opposition is using scare tactics and misinformation targeted at our communities and your constituencies. We need your help to continue to educate parents and your constituencies about the devastating impact of Prop 13 has had on our schools. We urge you to join us as we canvass all parts of the districts to raise awareness and encourage voters to support the upcoming proposition. And finally, we ask that you join us in being visible and vocal in your support of Schools and Communities First. We look forward to collaborating with you on this generation-defining pursuit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. Please, Robin.
My name is Robin Muchler, and I'm here representing SEIU Local 10-1, all of our classified members here in the school district. I do have a handout, if I can give it to Ms. Morowski and have it passed down.
Ann isn't setting the clock.
So that basically will summarize everything that Ms. Ryan has already gone over. Thank you so much for the eloquent words. It described the situation perfectly. The Schools and Community First Resolution will bring tremendous revenue to Sacramento City Unified School District by reclaiming $11 billion annually for our schools and our communities here in California. This resolution will also win a long-term fix to our broken tax system as it directly relates to K-12 schools and to community colleges as well. We appreciate you moving the resolution, and we request that you also take this to the CSBA, the California School Board Association, to further move the Schools and Community First resolution as well.
Yes.
SEIU just really appreciates what you're doing. We support this initiative, and again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We have no additional public comment.
Okay, I'm going to come down and present you with the resolution. We'll take a vote when we come back up. Or actually, let's go ahead. We'll take a motion to adopt the resolution. We have a second? Okay, all, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Woo!
Thank you so much. Do I stand in the middle? Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we close this out and move on to the next item, I also want to thank John Shabam and Ian Arnold for being strong advocates in bringing this to us many months ago as an opportunity not just to secure additional resources for our kids, but to build with our labor partners across the region so that we were together receiving the resources necessary to adequately fund public education.
And I will bring this to the CSBA.
Thank you. And Board Member Wu says he will bring this back to CSBA as he is a CSBA delegate and board member. Thank you so much. Item 7.0, special presentations, item 8.0, public comment. Do we have any public comments on non-agendized items?
We have 5 public comments. Please come up as your name is called. Diana McKenna, S. Samaniego, Cecilia Davila, Marian Bryson, and Alma Lopez.
Okay. We have 2 minutes each for our public comments, and thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Good evening, board members. My name is Diana McKenna, and I want to speak to you tonight regarding the relocation of the transportation facility. It was relocated in a parcel of land that is directly adjacent to our backyard. The facility houses 100-plus school buses and other vehicles that operate on a daily basis, arriving and departing from the parking lot off and on all day. With every run, there are backup signal horns and testing of safety horns. The insertion of this noise level has increased to an unacceptable level for the neighbors in that area. The school district installed a very unattractive, institutional-looking 10 to 12-foot wall sound barrier on the south side of the lot. The buses back up 7.5 feet from the wall. That wall is located 18 feet from our bedroom sliding glass window. There are not deep lots in this area, so the insertion of this noise is directly in our living space. I no longer feel comfortable leaving the doors and windows open because of the noise. And another thing that we're concerned about, my husband and I, is the emission of the carbon monoxide in that area.
That's very fair.
My husband approached one of your board members about putting in monitors to measure the levels, but was told that this couldn't be done. It was brought to our attention at the last meeting we had with some of the neighbors that the mitigated negative declaration that was submitted before the board, before this project began, has not been met. The material, thickness, and gaps in the wall are insufficient to comply with the decibel limit as outlined in the mitigated negative declaration. We hope that this information is either verified or negated in an attempt to solve this problem. Other concerns that have arisen because of this relocation is the increased glaring light from the newly installed LED lights in the parking area that shine directly in our light. They have put shields on some of the lights to help prevent that. And last, but certainly not least, is our concern over the decrease in value of our property.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm not sure, but when our clock is running out, it's not beeping right now. Just wanted to let you know. Thank you. Next person, we have 2 minutes per public commenter.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sandra Samaniego. I live on Maida Circle, right behind your new transportation center. It was referenced by my neighbor, Ms. McKenna, on the negative declaration report, which I believe is fiction. None of this is true, and I get woken up every morning at 6 a.m. 6 a.m. I'm home 98% of the time, and it's all day. It doesn't stop. I have honking, I have the alarms, and is that enough? No, no. You put in a PA system into the administration building, and then you have a machine shop. So I get grinding now. So I get grinding, I get honking, I get beeping, I get alarms. Not okay. And I can't imagine that CEQA would have approved buses 10 feet from a residential area. I am not happy. I've expressed that to many of your board members, Mr. Browning, who has been helpful, but he's done, I think, enough as he can. So I'm asking you to cease on the reverse beeping, which the CHP that you researched that they said is okay not to do. So did your insurance. So please stop with the reverse beeping already and attenuate the wall.
Thank you. Hi, good to see you.
I'm sorry, is it ready? Good afternoon to the board. I'm Marion Bryson from the Black Parallel School Board, and I'm here again this year. I was here last year for the Million Father March. Well, this year we're doing the 2019 Million Father March, and it's a little more important to us this year because the founder of the march, which is from the Black Project, actually passed away this year. So we're hoping to get more and more parents involved. This is our 3rd year here in Sacramento. So what I'm here to say today, the Million Father March is an opportunity for Black men or all men in our communities to show their commitment to the educational lives of their children on the first day of school and throughout the school year. Since the march began in 2004, fathers and other significant male caregivers across the country, it is a nationwide organization, across the country and around the world have been asked to take their children to school the first day. The Million Father March is the beginning of a year-long commitment of men to their children's education and success. And what we have found out at the Black Parallel School Board is when we do have male figures on our campuses, it is a big support. It does help in the kids' attitudes and the way that they handle themselves at school. So I'm here today to ask the board to please support and help engage us and parents to get them to come out on the first day of school. We're not asking for much. We're just asking that all the men take one child to school that day, call us to register with us so that we can get a count and keep their name and kind of keep track of what we're doing and what we're helping with. And also, if the board could please maybe ask the principals and the school staff to really support us on this and maybe do robocalls or whatever type of help that we can get on this. And really appreciate this and the board.
I would love to help you. Can you please send me or give me your flyer and send me any of the social media
Yes.
posts that you're doing? I would love to be able to push it out within the community.
Okay, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
I appreciate your advocacy. Hello. We're going to reset the clock for you. Wait 1 second.
Good evening. My name is Cecilia Davila, and I too am here for the noises from the buses and the pollution and transportation center. I'll be brief.
That's okay.
You've heard it before. But the noise, this is incessant honking every morning, starting at 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30, and it just goes on and on. You try to sit in the backyard and have coffee, can't do it, you can't read. I can smell, I don't know if anyone else can, but I can smell some of the fumes coming in. I'm right behind it. And then it starts again around 4 or 4:30. It's just this constant noise. Can't have guests in my home. I invite people for dinner. We usually sit in the backyard and have some adult beverages before dinner. Can't even enjoy that any longer. So we all just, we all try to be good neighbors, and that's all we're asking from the school district, is to fix it.
Thank you.
Find some way to fix it.
Thank you very much, and I know we're working on that, and thank you all for coming out and sharing this tonight.
Buenas tardes,
And can
superintendente,
you reset, sorry, I want to make sure we give you your full time. Reset the clock, great, thank you.
miembros de la mesa directiva. My name is Alma Lopez. I'm the statewide coordinator for Brown Issues. And I'm just simply here to state that we had 2 community forums on school safety on July 17th, one at Burbank High School and one in the community. And I'm just here to just continue pushing the message for redefining safety for our students. And I appreciate that we're going to have this conversation on August 15th. But one thing that I want to state was a conversation that keeps coming with our students and our parents is the need for caring adults. And I think oftentimes for a lot of us, we have a caring adult in our lives who believed in us and saw our talents and our gifts before we believed in ourselves. And why I say that is because I also learned that Burbank High School and McClatchy High School lost their parent advisor due to the budget cuts. But those are the things and the positions that really matter. The people who make our students safe, the people who they go to for any type of issues that are happening at home or in the communities. And I look forward to seeing also more investments in these positions because this is what safety looks like for our community, especially when it comes to folks being bilingual in the school campus, who not only our students go to, our English learners go to, but our parents as well. And so I just want to bring this up because that's one of the reasons why I'm here, because I had a caring adult in high school who believed in me, and I also know that that's the case for a lot of our students currently. So I look forward to this conversation on August 15th. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did receive 3 additional cards,
Okay,
President. One from Veronique Hanna, from Mike Zara, and Jason Wiener.
okay. And we have 2 minutes each, and we're resetting the clock.
Yeah, I'm Mike Zara, and I live on Maida Circle, and there's nothing more I can say than what's already been said, just the fact that it's disrupting lives. The quality of life is going down quick with this. Something needs to get done, and, I'm not sure what it is, but there's been a lot of talk. I haven't seen any action yet, so I would just appreciate if something can get done and as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. We're going to reset the clock for you.
Thank you. I've never done this before, so I'm a little nervous, so thank you. I just wanted to express how devastating that this has been to the quality of my life for the last 2 years. I can no longer go outside and enjoy my home that I've worked hard for and I've owned for the last 20 years. The sounds that start and wake me up alarmingly at 5:45 in the morning, and they've gone as late as 8:45 in the evening. It's a constant variance of noises. It's backup beeping for all of your buses. It's honking. It's alarm systems that are going off. And as pronounced as the fumes from the diesel engine, it's noxious. And I'm very concerned about the particles, the fine particles. My understanding is that I shouldn't be smelling these particles, and that even though I don't smell them, that they're very toxic. And my home literally is 18 feet from this concrete wall, which in itself is very institutional. My backyard is just very long, but very narrow, 18 feet. And just last Friday, there was this incessant noise that I'd never heard before, and fumes that I'd not smelled before. And I was told by Ron Hill that he didn't know, but apparently the buses were going through their smog certification 18 feet from my windows in the heat. And so I'm told that you want to be good neighbors, but I've not seen evidence that you have been a good neighbor. My hope is that, I don't know that you can correct this. I think an egregious mistake was made, and I just ask you to please move back to where you were. And if you cannot move, can you please move me? Because it's 2 years. I don't know that I can tolerate physically, emotionally. I have no home to come to. My home has become a prison. I cannot have my windows open. I cannot live outside. That's how I created my life. My windows are open. I live outside. My house faces my backyard. That's my living space, and I just don't have that anymore. And I just implore you. I think it'll be much more cost-effective if you could correct the wrong.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I have to tell you, I'm very troubled by the sound issues that you have, but I'm more troubled by the diesel fuel exposure. And thank you for bringing that to my attention, and I will certainly be looking into that. And the clock is still not working, so when the time is being run out, I want to make sure I'm being fair to all our speakers, but it's not actually notifying us. Thank you. Mr. Weiner?
Chair Ryan and the board, thank you for hearing me this evening. As Alma said, we wanted to make sure to report out because a coalition of community groups held 2 forums on July 17th in response to the ending of the contract of school resource officers and the opportunity to redefine school safety. And while we'll share in more depth over the next couple of weeks and at the meeting on the 15th, we did want to make sure to present some of the things we heard, the themes on that night. And really, some of those themes are, just very quickly, that our systems are not really designed to support many of the students and families in the ways that they need around safety and school climate. And additionally, that campuses are often not welcoming and connected to students and families in the community. But what did these folks say? We had maybe 50 people show up for the evening forum. We had a number of students and a principal show up for the lunchtime forum. What did they say that the district should be investing in? One, as Alma said, was more trusted adults on campus, especially those who really understand students' life experiences. That is the most effective way to keep students safe and supported on campus and forestall and prevent any incidents. More adults and youth that have the training and skills to support and counsel students that they encounter. And that's all staff at a school site, not just counselors, but certainly adding counselors, social workers, mental health workers. A healthy and positive school culture that empowers and engages students. A prevention mindset is one of those things that we heard from people. Mm-hmm. Parent and family engagement as a key component of school safety, and this absolutely includes making sure there are staff and others on school sites who speak the languages of the parents that are in that community. And lastly, where schools do interact with law enforcement agencies, we really need a clear system of procedures and accountability that makes it transparent to all when and why police should be called and what power that district and school site officials have in cases where something goes over the line. And so we look forward to working with you to make sure those are put in place and that we spend the money in more effective ways for school safety.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner. We have no further public comments. Moving on to item 9.0, communications. Item 9.1, employee organizational reports. I do want to share, before we move through the employee organizational reports, the District Parent Advisory Committee, and then the board member reports, that we have moved this to the top of the agenda specifically to hear and meet the needs of our parent community that expressed that it had been very difficult for them to stay late into board meetings to provide their updates, and we wanted to both respect your voice and your contributions and the countless hours you give to the district on your committees, so we want to enable your participation further. With that, item 9.1, employee organizational reports. First report, SCTA.
Good evening.
We're going to go at, sorry, our clock's still not working. Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening, board members. My name is Hassan McWhorter. I'm the second vice president of Sacramento City Teachers Association, and was also a SCTA bargaining team member in 2016 and 17. It's been exactly 626 days since Superintendent Aguilar signed the tentative agreement at Mayor Steinberg's house, and 593 days since this school board unanimously approved our contract. It still has not been fully implemented. After refusing to abide by the provision that restructured our salary schedule, the district backtracked on that agreement, then took the unprecedented step of suing its own teachers to try unsuccessfully to stop the arbitration. The lawsuit was a total failure, and the arbitration was a total victory for SCTA. We estimate the district wasted at least $250,000 of taxpayers' dollars. To date, the district has refused to turn over the documentation that would allow us to see exactly how much money the district wasted. It was worth noting that today that we received a check from the district reimbursing us for our court costs and responding to the district's frivolous lawsuit. Unfortunately, that has not been the end of it. Despite an ironclad agreement regarding the use of health plan savings to truly bring about equity, access, and social justice, by using those savings to increase services to our students, including lowering class sizes and an increased number of school nurses, psychologists, counselors, and other professional staff, the districts acts like no such agreement exists and grossly exaggerated a fiscal crisis to try to subvert the contract and hide the reckless fiscal mismanagement. Despite PERB issuing a complaint against the district regarding its refusal to honor the health plan provision, the district is dragging its feet on agreeing to expedite the matter before an arbitrator. Why? Because anyone who understands collective bargaining agreements know that district is holding a losing hand. Rather than improve services to students, the district would rather give millions of tax dollars to a for-profit insurance company, HealthNet. Rather than honor our fully enforceable collective bargaining agreement, the district launched a propaganda campaign against its own teachers, a campaign that has been exposed in the recently disclosed emails. How do Superintendent Aguilar and Board President Ryan, the two leaders of the district who promised time and time again to operate in an open and transparent manner, justify their decision to keep the emails from FICMAC's Mike Frine from the public and even full school board? How does Superintendent Aguilar explain confirming in writing to Dave Gordon the fact that the district forgot to count at least 730 students, which was an $8 million per year mistake on April 1st, 2019, but refused to disclose it for another 6 weeks, including during the layoff hearing where district staff may have provided false testimony, and only then burying it in a nearly 200-page document? How is it that even after it was pointed out to many of you in February and March, not one of you thought to question why the district was projecting to lose 1,071 students in 2019-20, when for the previous 3 years, the average decline in enrollment
SCIU. Do we have any organizational updates from SCIU this evening? TCS? Teamsters? UPE? Moving on to item 9.2, our district parent advisory committees. Our community advisory committee. As Kenya makes her way up here, I want to thank her for sitting in on our chief academic officer position interviews. I also want to thank you for the request you made for the CAC support. I know that we are working on that, and you were also one of the voices that led to us adjusting the agenda to better facilitate your participation, so thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to personally thank the board for changing the time for the CAC to report. It is a burden that's been lifted off of many of the community members like DLAC and of course LCAP. So I thank you personally from the bottom of my heart. I also want to, so as the CAC chair, I would like to personally thank Dr. Taylor and Director Bryant for inviting me to be a part of, well, the CAC to be a part of the MTSS conference in Long Beach. It was very informative, and I am waiting to share information with you from as the CAC chair and as from a parent's perspective. So I look forward to that. Nothing to report right now from the CAC. We just look forward to our first meeting, which will be September 24th. We invite all the board members to attend. We've changed the format of our meetings. In the first hour, the meetings will take place. It's called Parent to Parent. It is an opportunity for parents to actually interact with other parents who have children with special needs, and for us to get to know each other. And topics will vary on during each meeting. And then the second portion of the meeting, the second hour, is when the business portion of our meeting will take place. So topics like LCAP, curriculum review. So again, we invite all board members to attend that first meeting on September 24th.
Thank you very much, and I saw it posted also on social media, and I'll make sure to help share the word as well. Our District English Learner Advisory Committee, do we have a representative from DLAC here tonight? No? Our Local Control Accountability Plan / Parent Advisory Committee, do we have a representative here tonight? I think we have a representative. I don't know if they want to speak. No? Okay. Item 9.3, Superintendents Report.
Thank you very much, President Ryan. I'm going to be very brief. I want to first thank everybody for being here. The first August board meeting sort of kicks off our academic school year, even though our students aren't here, but I do want to just talk about how excited we all are of kicking off our preparations for the new school year and looking forward to welcoming all of our students and families and staff with open arms in about less than a month now. Today's August 1st. Part of what we have been focusing on is continuing to shift our mindset around continuous improvement and how it is that we can continue to address the ongoing deficiencies that we have as a system. Certainly we will lean in and always be forward-looking in how we continue to make improvements in areas that we are still deficient in. We will continue to focus squarely on the challenges that we face from a budgetary standpoint. We know that we have to do that in order to make sure that we offer opportunities to our students and our families. But at the same time, I think it's important that we balance our efforts, our time, our energy around those issues with the need to focus on increasing student achievement across the district as well. And focusing on striving to become a high-poverty, high-performing school district, and I think Sac City can do that. It's in the middle of the summer, and you can see already that we have parents here and other stakeholders who want to partner with us, who want to provide feedback and give us ideas And I believe that we have a staff and certainly a Board of Education that has adopted that mindset of continuous improvement, and we look forward to continue to engage with all of our stakeholders. Again, thank you for being here, and I hope that we will continue to see all stakeholders participate and attend our future board meetings.
Thank you very much. Item 9.4.
Madam President,
Yes.
we do have one public comment on this item.
Oh, okay, we have a public comment on
Alice
this
Mercer.
item. And Alice, if you wait 1 second, we're going to make sure we get the clock working.
Okay.
I think it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, Alice Mercer, Hubert Bancroft Elementary. I've got better things to do over here than to be here today. But I'm not hearing anything in that about shortages of teachers over at McClatchy. I'm just talking to a teacher back there. About half the staff's gone over at Rosa Parks. Teachers are leaving. You're not going to be able to educate to the level, we're not going to be a destination district, which was the hope when we negotiated this contract, if we don't have the staff to do it. And this sits squarely at your table. This is a result of the acrimony in labor relations that we've had, the malfeasance that has been practiced over with budgetary and finance issues, and just the dishonest way that you've dealt with teachers. They know this. They're going to other districts. You need to address this. We can't pretend like this isn't happening. And for the teachers who do remain, the question on everybody's mind is, where's our retro pay? Because you've agreed to do this. It took a lot of work to get to this point. We need it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer. Do we have any other public comments on this item? Moving on to item 9.4, the President's Report. So I just want to begin by sharing that my husband reminded me the other day that I have spent 2 months of evenings and weekends away from my children over the course of the last year. And he reminded me that because he said, I hope you understand that what you're doing on the board must make a difference. It must make a difference to upend a system that has for decades failed students who look just like my children. And we have allowed that system to be inequitable by design due to a lack of courage and appetite to have the courageous conversations and make the necessary changes to focus on children. I love our teachers and have many teacher friends throughout the school district, some of whom have come to me and said this ugly and painful rhetoric must stop. And when I looked at my husband and said the sacrifices are worth something, I have said I will be able to look my children in the eyes one day and say, I refuse to accept a system that didn't serve our children. I refuse to accept a system that didn't focus on student achievement as the center of everything we do. Now, I heard that there is too much friction to come together to support a community in schools initiative that would generate billions of dollars to finally ensure that we are not fighting over resources, but have the adequate resources to meet the needs of children and our hardworking teachers and district employees. I reject that. We have every opportunity to change these conditions, and it starts with us. Language matters. I would never dream of saying the things that I heard tonight and have been hearing for the last several weeks. They simply aren't true. We love our children, we love our employees, and we can and should do better. And it rests on all of our shoulders. There is not one stakeholder group that can solve this. This is incumbent upon all of us. It is telling to me that I have been able to, over the course of the last few weeks, sit down with 4 of our 5 labor partners who have said we are moving in the right direction with courage and conviction for kids for the first time in many years. That I've sat down with teachers who have said, I am in pain because of the trauma and the divide. But it can stop right here. We can commit to a compassion campaign where we are in Sac City finally focusing on student achievement. I want to say that lost in all of this rhetoric is the fact that you said to me 2 years ago when I became your board president, and 2 years ago when we found this superintendent, that it was unacceptable that we were behind the rest of the state in high school graduation rates. It was unacceptable that we were failing to meet the college readiness rates for Black and brown students, and that you wanted us to do something about it. Well, for the first time, we have exceeded high school graduation rates and surpassed the statewide average. We have seen college readiness rates grow, particularly for some of our most disenfranchised students, including our Latinx students. And we have finally seen our students at every level begin to improve in their student achievement. This should be the focus of our work. And I'm asking our community tonight, I'm asking our labor partners to put this ugliness aside and do what's right by children. Because you can wait for the leadership to change and hope that other people will come in here, or you can endure and exit and see this continue for decades to come, essentially failing our children and accepting a culture in Sac City that does not have the courage to do right by kids. And so I'm going to close by saying I'm going to go home to my daughter tonight and say, you have missed 2 months of nights and weekends with me, but I am fighting for you, I am fighting for your brother, and I am fighting for children who have been asking the board, the district, our teachers, our staff to have the courage to do the right thing for far too long. Item 9.5, our student member report, Olivia Ang Olson.
Hello. I want to give a brief introduction because this is my first board meeting. My name is Olivia Ang Olson. I'm a senior at McClatchy High School, and I'm very excited to be the 2019 to 2020 student board member. For a number of years now, I've been involved with youth organizations such as the Sacramento Youth Alliance, the Sacramento District Youth Advisory Council, and the California Association of Student Councils. It was with the Association of Student Councils that in the fall of 2018, I worked with fellow high school leaders to create and present a mental health proposal to the California State Board of Education. As someone who is interested and passionate about education policy, I'm both excited and honored to be serving as a student board member for this coming year. I understand that I'm still learning about the roles and responsibilities of board members, but there's one policy I'd like to bring to light tonight, one that has been of concern of my fellow students. In March of 2009, the College Board introduced Score Choice, a feature that gives students the option to choose the scores they send to colleges. Designed to reduce test day stress, Score Choice gives students an opportunity to show colleges the scores they feel best represent their abilities. Towards the end of the 2018 to 2019 school year, high schoolers in our district noticed that all their test scores, all SATs, all AP tests, etc., were posted on their transcript, a document that is sent to colleges for applications. They soon found out that SCUSD had enacted a policy that without consent or input posted all scores. I ask if this policy is truly for the benefit of our district students when the majority of high schoolers across our country have the ability to choose the scores they submit. Not only does this put SCUSD high schoolers at a college application disadvantage, it greatly increases stress on test day, which is known to reduce performance for some individuals. It also may discourage students from taking difficult tests they otherwise would have taken for fear of having an unwanted score stay on their record. I spoke with Superintendent Aguilar this past spring at a student forum where I asked him about this new district policy and was told that the purpose of reporting the scores is for helping UC schools with data mining. I'm sure there is a better way to go about reporting scores, one that is not at the expense of our students, such as using score data unattached to school name or student name, or creating a document separate from transcripts to use score data and not interfere with the college admission process for our high schoolers. It is with that hope that I encourage a revision of the existing policy by the board's policy committee, as we as a district and board strive to take into account student concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I so appreciate your comments. Very strong way to start on the board. Thank you. Item number 9.6, which is information sharing by board members. If we have a clock at 10 minutes, I will take board member requests to speak. Board member Wu, followed by board member Morowski.
I just want to report that I attended the Council on Great City Schools. Next time I will bring back sampling of textbooks that were prepared for our multilingual schools. So, Spanish.
Thank you very much, Vice President Wu. Board member Morowski.
Thank you, President Ryan. I just wanted to announce that myself, President Ryan, and Councilmember Jay Chenier are going to co-host a forum at Bret Harte to talk about the school, to talk about enhancing the school-community relationships, and to share with parents and our community some of the great things that are happening on campus. That will be August 13th at 6:30 p.m. I hope anyone who lives in the Curtis Park or Oak Park area who's interested, current parents, staff, it's going to be open. We're just going to get the flyers and things out in the next couple of days. So I hope if you see it, you can help us share and get the word out. And again, the date is August 13th, 6:30 p.m. It'll be at Bret Harte in the multipurpose room. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Board Member Morowski. It looks like we have no other board member comments at this time. Moving on to item 10.0, Board Workshop, Strategic Plan, and Other Initiatives. Item 10.1, our school climate update, which will be provided by Iris Taylor, Dr. Iris Taylor, and Vincent Harris this evening. Thank you.
So good evening, Board President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. My name is Iris Taylor. I'm the Chief Academic Officer. And as you see tonight, I am joined by several of my colleagues from various departments to share with you an update on our culture, our school climate and culture initiatives. We've divided this presentation into two parts. So the first you'll hear tonight, which will focus on an overview of how we're defining school climate and culture and our current reality, and then on our overall district indicators in this area, including suspension, chronic absenteeism, and a look at our school climate survey data. Part two, which will feature at our next board meeting, will focus on a deeper dive into specific initiatives to intervene in our culture and climate and to build positive school culture and climate. So just, this is very critical work for the district, and it's not just critical for us as staff, but we have also heard from several of our community partners, our parent advisory groups around the importance of culture, positive school culture and climate, including our graduation task force and our African American task force that have put forth in their recommendations that we focus in this area, our community advisory committee, our DLAC, our LCAP PAC. So this is an important area of work for us as a system. Our guiding principle also points us to the importance of this work. It's our goal as a system that every student in Sac City attends school in an environment that is positive, that is welcoming, that is caring, and that they do this every day. We also recognize that this is one of the greatest systemic inequities within our system, that our students are not experiencing this, and this is also impacts our ability to actualize our guiding principle.
I just want to let you know, we're having some technical difficulties, so we're unable to see the presentation here. We're going to refer to the PowerPoint packet that we have. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Myceli.
Slight adjustment. Good morning, Board President, Superintendent Aguilar, board members.
Good evening. I promised to get you out of here before the morning.
Oh, thank you. Sounds good. So when we talk about school climate, what school climate refers to is the quality or character of school life, essentially the heart and soul of the school, sort of that feeling of you get when you walk into a school. The essence of a school that leads a child, a teacher, an administrator to love going to the school and to look forward to being there every day. A positive school climate helps people feel socially, emotionally, and physically safe in their school. It includes students, parents, and school staffs, the norms, the beliefs, the relationships, the teaching and learning practices, as well as the organizational structure of a school. And according to the National School Climate Council, a sustainable, positive school climate promotes academic and social development. In order to better see what school climate looks like in Sac City, several measures are used. Those are, as you can see, suspension rates, chronic absenteeism rate, the school climate survey, California Healthy Kids survey, empathy interviews, focus groups, as well as academic progress and achievement. Additionally, in order to support cultivating positive school climate, we know that having healthy adults who are socially and emotionally well, who are cultivating a culture of care is critically important. I think I heard that earlier from other members in the community. Adult social emotional well-being in particular affects the outcomes for our students, socially, emotionally, and certainly academically. Essentially, how adults show up in space to engage with each other as well as with our students affects the way they learn as well as how they thrive in their system. With that in mind, we will be launching an Sel Learning Summit starting with our leaders next week on August 6th and 7th. At this Sel Summit, learning will focus on the neuroscience of stress and trauma, research-based strategies for self-care for adults, and ways to deepen connections and build relationships with others in order to strengthen connectedness and belonging for all in the community. The hope is that our leaders will take this learning back to share with their staff as they collectively begin to think about and act upon strengthening the culture of care for all of their staff, students, and communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Myzie. We appreciate all your incredible work.
And now I'm going to give you an overview of our current reality. We have a lot of good work going on. Despite the good work, we also want to acknowledge the pockets of success and also pockets of areas where we need to improve. We do have leaders and staff that understand the importance of approaching behavior through positive and restorative approaches, but we also we currently experience situations where exclusionary practices are affecting our students daily. District-wide, there is no center of expertise or infrastructure for long-term and short-term student behavior management. We also lack the MTSS Center of Expertise. The work that we currently experience that impacts our students' behavior, impacts student behavior is done in silos. We have a capacity gap. We do lack professional development, and we are currently, of course, acknowledging and working on the whole idea of mindset shifts. And we also experience this permeating belief that students cannot access behavior and academic skills to be successful in our schools. We have an opt-in culture. Weak data governance and uneven data practices across our district, where there are inconsistencies in the way that we analyze our data, where we store behavior data and how we share that data. And some of these experiences are also not student-focused. When we think about a non-student focus, think about implicit bias. It seems to be present and it's not dependent on the difference in race between administrator or teacher than that of the student. So our system practices currently drive suspension outcomes, and sometimes suspensions are used more instead of helping students improve, more to appease adults. So now Maisie will give us some more information on the suspension research piece.
Good evening. I'm going to basically extend the conversation around the current reality just to ground us within actual data points as well. Thank you. All right. So as we look at the suspension research, really the themes that pop are things that I don't think are a surprise to anyone in this room. We know that the notion that suspending a student actually has detrimental impacts, whether it be the exclusionary practice of removing a student, and that ultimately, when you remove a student, two things are really manifesting the research. One, the removal doesn't seem to work. It doesn't seem to change the behavior. The other and more important piece of that removal through via suspension is that you lose instructional time, you lose learning time, and the student is impacted academically. And so we have a clarion call to action to think about how do we manage climate without using the lever of suspension, but use more appropriate tactics that keep students engaged and learning. As we look at our data, that also gives us a clarion call for action, because we can see that as we look at the California dashboard, in both suspension and also in chronic absenteeism, we actually are orange. In further context, when you look at our 6.1% suspended at least once, for the state, that number is about 3.5%. We look at our chronic absenteeism rate of 14.6. For the state, that number is about 9%. And so ultimately, as we think about our work in the system, we know that we need to do a better job of getting our handle around how to reduce these numbers, but more importantly, how do we engage with students? The goal isn't just to reduce the numbers, it's increasing our engagement strategies with students so that they're present and able to learn effectively. Then as we look at making all student groups visible, you can see here some variation, if you will, in terms of our suspension numbers. We've spoken about this earlier in terms of the gap we face, whether it be academic or in this context, in terms of behavior, and how it's important for us to close and reduce those gaps going forward. A lot has been spoken about from this board and in the community about the capital suspension report. So the goal here isn't to restate, but to declare how important it is for us to change these conditions, particularly for our African male students. It is worth noting that we've been looking at the data over the school year. Actually, we always have members of the community, Cecile Nunley being one, who have continuously reminded us of the urgency to change these conditions, and we actually are working on that process as we speak. As you look at the capital suspension report, this was also spoken about last year, we have a regional challenge that not only is Sac City, of course, listed number 1, which is wholly unacceptable. We also see the similar districts in our neighboring area, including San Juan, Twin Rivers, also have, and Elk Grove also are called out with the same challenge. So we recognize that this is a deeply rooted challenge for us, both within the context of Sac City and within our region. Chronic absenteeism data, really in a large respect, trends the same way as our suspension data. And so again, it just calls out the importance of what are we doing for all of our students. With that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jennifer Kretzman in our attendance office, who will give you some of the sense of the work ahead that we're doing to change these conditions.
Hello. I just want to define chronic absence for you. So chronic absenteeism is looking at attendance through a new lens. In the past, we have looked at just ADA, average daily attendance, which is the number of enrolled students that show up on any given day. With chronic absence, we're aiming to identify specific students who are missing so much school that they're academically at risk. A student is considered chronically absent when they miss 10% or more of their enrolled school days for any reason. So this is different than in the past. We're looking at absences that are excused for medical reasons, unexcused absences, and even suspensions. If they miss school for 10% or more of their enrolled days, that is now putting their academic success in jeopardy. This equals 2 days a month, so just 2 days a month, or 18 days out of this school year. It's also important that we know and understand why our students are missing school. We understand their barriers, their lack of engagement, the school climate, so that we can better address the reasons that they're chronically absent. Now I'll turn it over to Matt.
Good evening, Superintendent and members of the board. So I'm going to introduce our student climate survey, and first of all, answer the question, why do we do a student climate survey? So the student climate survey really gives us the insights and the perceptions from students about how they are feeling around their school site. And it also then allows us to break this down so we can see how are different students experiencing our school sites. So, what do we measure when we do the student climate survey? We measure a variety of things. Sense of safety, that's both physical safety and emotional safety, and also belonging and connectedness. We also measure the different indicators of social emotional learning, including self-management, growth mindset, self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, and self-efficacy. So then the question, okay, well, what do we do with this data? So first of all, this gives us an insight into how a student's experiencing the current culture and climate within our school sites. It also then allows us to measure if there are any initiatives happening within the school around culture and climate, how are those going? It also answers the questions when we do a needs assessment around what is it exactly that we're trying to accomplish at that school site, in terms of culture and climate. And then also, when we actually try something out, can we see if a change is actually an improvement by looking at the data from student perceptions? So who does this survey go to? It goes to all students in grades 3 through 12. So next, we're going to look at some of the results from the survey. So first of all, when we look by grade level, we can see that those students who report the highest sense of connectedness and safety are at our small high schools. So that's a rate of 70% feeling connected and 76% feeling safe, both, again, physically and emotionally. The lowest rate of connectedness is at our large comprehensive high schools, reported at a rate of 60% of students. Our grade 3 through 6 students actually, worryingly, are reporting the lowest safety at only 61% of our 3 through 6 students reporting a positive sense of safety. If we look at this, how it breaks down by ethnicity and race, we can see that our white students report the highest sense of connectedness and safety are at 71% and 68%. And that our Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and African American students report the lowest levels of connectedness and at 62%. And our African American students report the lowest safety percentage at only 59%. Again, this gives us some insight into who are our culture and climate at the school site levels. Who are these working for?
So as I opened with, tonight's presentation is really focused on an overview and just grounding you in what our current reality is. And so I'm going to forecast for you the next upcoming board presentation, which will focus on key initiatives within the system. The first being our emerging multi-tiered system of support work. You heard Ms. Martinez speak about attending the multi-tiered systems of support statewide conference this past week. We also had several members of our staff attend that as well. You'll also share with you an overview of the data tools that we have available for us to support a multi-tiered system of support, some that you may already be familiar with. Our Performance and Targeted Action Index, our EIIS, or Early Identification and Intervention System, as well as something that we're calling our ABC reporting, which allows data analysis and planning for our site leaders. I'd like to just share with you that even as recent as today, during our principals meeting, our principals were introduced to these tools in the areas of chronic absenteeism, suspensions, and as well as suspension and climate and academic performance. We'll also focus on just this idea of building towards a new normal, right? Looking at our school climate work team and the work that was done this past school year and the early lessons learned from there, and then building the conditions and readiness for implementing climate best practices and initiatives. One that has been called out by our African American task force, looking at sites that have a 5% variance in suspension of African American students and the development of plans at those school sites. And then finally, we'll also include just the resource implications, grant pipelines that we have, our use of Title IV spending, and then just the professional learning and capacity building. So with that, I will open it up for public comment, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you. Mr. Barron, do we have any public comment?
Yes, Madam President, one public comment from Kenya Martinez.
Thank you. Kenya and Angie, are you also putting in a public comment? Okay. Okay.
I didn't see the card.
Okay, the clock started. I didn't.
We'll start it over again.
Thank
Can you
you.
start from the beginning? Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties
That's
tonight,
fine.
I think, as you saw.
Okay, I'll start speaking anyway. So, as I said earlier, I attended the MTSS conference
Yes.
in Long Beach. One of the things that I learned about was the Mckinney-Vento Act. So I would like to make a suggestion to the district that if you want to handle or at least address chronic absenteeism, you need to find out who is homeless or unsheltered, living unsheltered in our district.
Absolutely.
As you guys know, the Mckinney-Vento Act does provide transportation to students, and that would help alleviate some of the chronic absenteeism happening here within our district. Another suggestion I would like to make is that for any student attending a Title I school, that I believe the district should come up with an alternative plan to get students to their school location. Many students can't afford to get to school. There's a school in New Jersey where, don't remember the name of the school or the principal, but it was highlighted on CBS this morning, where the school principal actually opened a laundry facility. So I would suggest that the district open a laundry facility,
Yeah.
so that way families aren't utilizing the money that they could give to their student to get to school. So these are the suggestions that I would make before the board to address our chronic absenteeism. So,
Thank you so much, Kenya. Angie? Oh, sorry. Good. I just called you Angie instead of Angel.
It's okay, it's okay. Good
Had a
evening,
moment
Board-
momentarily out.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, and board members. So one, it has nothing to do with this. Well, it does. Thank you for your comments earlier. From parent to parent, I really felt your passion in saying those things, and I felt that you were there to protect our children, all of our children. So I just want to say thank you to you, Board President. Second, I just want to thank staff I feel like it was the first time really acknowledging the current reality. I feel like throughout all of these years, there's been a lot of excuses. And so this presentation on what the current reality is, we need to know where we're at and be honest about where we're at to move forward. So I really needed to hear that as a parent, and I appreciate staff for being truthful and being transparent with that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was training. A lot of the time, we're talking about training, professional development for administrators. We really need training for folks on the ground. I want to call out campus monitors. I know training's expensive, but the train the trainer model doesn't work. It just doesn't. And so we need to find ways to find professional development opportunities for our campus monitors who are dealing with the students all the time. When I was at the meeting that Black Parallel School Board talked about, Brown Issues talked about, there was a student that said a campus monitor changed her life. A campus monitor got her through her trauma. We forget about those people, but we really need to hold them to high esteem. And with that $1.5 million that we're wondering how to spend it, let's think about things like that. The other thing is we have so many providers, we have so many partners at the table, after school programs and other things. How can we get partners at one table to talk about school climate? We need to get all folks involved that are serving all of our kids, all providers, and even new providers and partnerships to be involved in the planning and implementation for improving school climate. We cannot do this alone. I have lots of ideas for improving school climate, funding strategies, partnership opportunities. I was an intern here at this district before, so I would love to be a part of that, but at least get our providers all on one page. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Angel. Do we have any other public comments on this item? Okay, so we're going to take board member questions and comments at this time. I don't have anyone who's lit up yet, but I do have a couple questions myself. Starting on page 8, I'm so appreciative of the fact that you called out the reality of the Capital of Suspension report and the efforts that we have underway to buck those troubling data trends, including the culmination of our African American Achievement Task Force with some very ambitious goals around how we can change those conditions for Black students. Two things I want to point out. One, the Sacramento City Unified suspension rates in the district being among the worst in the state. We have, as you know, through MyZ and some of our other work in the district, instituted restorative practices and tried this idea of transformational practices. And I would like to hear from MyZ or others, what is the holdup in ensuring restorative practices are happening at all of our school sites where we know that they are a critical lever of change for ensuring that students have their needs addressed versus being disproportionately disciplined?
So I'm going to share something. So we had a conversation with principals today. And one of the things that I remain to say to them is we can talk about restorative justice and the importance and value of putting in place restorative justice. But until we store up our foundational and transformational conditions, it's difficult to restore to something. Right? And so we would say you can't restore to current conditions because current conditions, as we know, are not helpful and are not inclusive and of all of our students. So with that said, I would say that we have some sites that are continuing to engage in the learning that we started a few years ago and are doing some wonderful things. And I would call out schools like Oak Ridge and Luther Burbank and Wilsey Wood. There are other school sites that are beginning to implement pieces of restorative practices. In particular, Kennedy High School is doing some EQ ambassadors, so training up their student leaders to really begin to think about creative ways to support their school climate effort. We have a long ways to go. There's a lot of work that we need to do with our school sites. We've had a few school sites that have asked and requested for, staff has decided as consensus that restorative practices was important to them. And so we are doing some work with John Sloat. We're doing some work actually this summer with 2 other schools in terms of training whole staff. So slowly, yes, and not ideally where we want to be, but we know and understand that the path forward is to really begin to use restorative justice as a way to address the great disproportionality and certainly all the data piece that you saw tonight.
So I appreciate that answer, but I do want to just really call out what I think you're not saying, which is we have historically in this district provided restorative practices at sites where people feel comfortable embracing restorative practices. And we have shied away from ensuring that the district as a whole, at campuses we know would benefit from restorative practices, institutes them them because campuses aren't necessarily open to embracing restorative practices or transformational justice. And once again, this is an example of an inequity where we've prioritized not the needs of students, but wanting to finally get to a place over a period of time where our campuses feel comfortable embracing this as a tool for justice for Black and brown students. And I appreciate what you just said, Maisie, but I have to tell you, as long as I've been on the board, I have heard that we are making incremental progress. And in my mind, I'm thinking about the hundreds of students we've lost along the way where we've waited for individuals to decide that this is an intervention that merits exploration.
Absolutely.
We have a question from Board Member Morowski.
Thank you. Well, I think because this is the first part of a two-part series, and I think a lot of the answers and the interventions are coming, I'll hold some of the questions that I would like to explore more deeply next time. But I just wanted to say that this is deeply disturbing data, and commend you for bringing it forward to us to have these important discussions. I know it's not easy to present data that is not reflecting well. Particularly on the safety data, I did find that really disturbing, and I just look forward to working together with you to figure out how we get more behavioral health supports into our student populations. At the bottom of the hierarchy of needs is safety. So if kids aren't feeling safe, I don't know how they're doing anything. So really look forward to continuing this dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you for your excellent points, Board Member Morowski. Vice President Wu.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not going to hold back. Under building towards a new normal, are you going to give me a hint on what the bright spot at Kennedy is?
So I noted a strategy that they began last year around really building up their student leaders around restorative practices to support the culture and climate of the school. And what we're finding is their referrals are decreasing and their suspensions are decreasing. So that's what we mean.
Wonderful.
Let me throw out a recommendation, and you might use it, you might not. You might be able to get student leaders out of a non-leader. Just try that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Minnick.
Thank you. So first, I want to say thanks for all your work on this, and I really appreciate seeing all of you from different departments working on this together. And this is, I mean, it's very clear that this is something that impacts all our kids and our entire district. So we're talking about absenteeism, but we're also talking about academics and so much stuff. And so to see you all here presenting this together I feel like is really powerful. I really appreciate a comment that was made, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially that we have this tendency to use suspensions and discipline as a way to provide kind of comfort for adults as opposed to the support to support the needs of our kids, which is absolutely true with a lot of how we do discipline, but it's also true how we do a lot of things. We spend a lot of our time making sure that adults are happy to the detriment of our kids. So I appreciate you putting it out there like that. And I agree with Ms. Garcia, who spoke about the importance of knowing where we're at right now in the current status. And I really appreciate that you're doing this in two segments, because sometimes these presentations come to us and it's like, here's where we're at, here's what we're doing, here's where we're going. And it's a little bit, it's a lot to take in. So I really appreciate being able to kind of take this information, have a couple weeks to kind of digest the current situation so I can better understand where we're headed. So, and to have a little bit of a teaser from Dr. Taylor about what we have to look forward to in a couple weeks. And also you mentioned Wilsey Wood and their use of restorative practices. I've seen this in action when they use, restorative circles and these students working together. And it's not rocket science, it's common sense, and it's just about treating each other with respect. And it's hard to believe that there's ever been a conversation where anyone has argued against doing this, but it happens all the time because we're scared of making changes or doing things different, or it's easier just to suspend kids or whatever ridiculous thing people say. So I just appreciate that you're calling out the spots where it's working, because we do have a lot of places that where this respectful way of handling discipline and struggles of our kids really does work. And there's really no excuse that we're not doing this everywhere. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate President Ryan's point that, the folks who are doing this are those who believe in it and are willing to go all in. The hard work is getting those who are so stuck with the status quo to be willing to try something new. So I appreciate that you're making those efforts. So thank you.
Thank you. So I want to close out by thanking all of the team for your incredible hard work. I want to really recognize the Be Here campaign and the amazing strides that it has made to lift students and ensure that they are, in fact, in school and not chronically absent, and how that can be life-changing for so many of our students who've lost academic time. I also just want to say, as we move forward with this work, it is incredibly troubling to me, as it was to Member Morawski, to see that our African American community feels the most disconnected, that some of our on-P community feels the most disconnected, because we know if you are disconnected, your likelihood of being academically successful is very small. And so this idea of addressing connectedness in school climate is huge, and I think it's the responsibility of all of our adults at every level. Our campus community welcomes a student, not just the teacher, the principal, it is the cafeteria worker, it is the custodian, and we have to figure out a way to recognize school climate training that is culturally inclusive, that is meant to ensure that every student, irrespective of the color of their skin, walks onto a campus and feels equally valued. And I hope that that's where our work will take us next. Thank you. Item 10.2, Constituent Services Report, which will be done tonight by Stefan Brown.
President Ryan, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent, 10 months ago I stood before you and presented a newly fashioned constituent service office.
We do not have a quorum.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, we have 4 board members present tonight, and Member Minnick walked away. Member Minnick, I don't know where you are, but if you can please come back to the dais so that we can continue the board meeting. Since this is an informational presentation and there is no action, do we still have to maintain a quorum?
You can proceed, but technically, it should always be a quorum, even for information. So you can proceed since there's no action, but technically, a meeting requires a quorum regardless of whether action or not is taken.
Okay,
So-
thank you. So continue, and we will bring Michael in as soon as possible.
Very good. Today, with a year's experience behind us, I am able to speak with more clarity about the mission, the value, and the activities of this department. Over the next few minutes, I will present data for the 2018-19 school year. We will briefly discuss some specific events or trends that we see in the office, and also discuss some hotspots that generate a lot of interest. As we go through the data, it's important to note that of the 1,349 cases included, all are not complaints. Some are requests for information, others are constituents seeking guidance on how to best solve an issue. And there are also 2 thank yous. It's important, before I proceed, that I mention the team. Some of them are still off for the summer. Pat Lamar, an ombudsperson, Janet Patullo, an ombudsperson, and Kimberly Petty, an office technician. The mission is very simple. The Constituent Service Office's mission is to guide Sac City parents and community members on the most effective route to address and resolve their concerns. In doing so, we work with practically every school and every department in the district on a daily basis. We are up and running with the department's website, and it generates a lot of activity. Many of the contacts that we have come through the website. You can kind of focus on 4 specific lanes that we are involved with. We facilitate complaint resolution. We support school sites and departments. We identify, track, and report on trends, and we develop and propose ideas for goal achievement. Now the data. The first slide I have is broken up by trustee area. We'll start with trustee area 1, member Morosky, 185 contacts in the 2018-19 school year. Trustee area 2, member Garcia, had 195 contacts through our office last year. Trustee area 3, member Pritchett, 213 contacts. Trustee area 4, member Minnick, 151 contacts to the Constituent Service Office. Trustee area 5, Ms. Vang, 163 contacts. Trustee area 6, member Wu, 142 contacts in our office. And finally, trustee area 7, President Ryan, 145 contacts. And then we have sort of a district general category, which is somewhat self-explanatory, doesn't fit easily into a specific part of town. The next slide is, how are we contacted? It's fairly even between those that contact us by phone, 491 or 36.4%, and those that walk in, 483 or 35.8%. A fairly significant drop off to the next category, which is web form, a form of email, which is 205 and 15.2%, and then you can see the rest. The next piece of data we have is who contacts us. And this is category is dominated by parents. Of the 1,349 contacts, 1,204 were parents, or 89%, a fairly significant drop off to the next category, which is community member. We also have staff, those generated through the board office, and 23 students reached out to us. Next, we have why they're contacting us. And the first one up there is the district permits. And permits dominate our office for the first several months of the school year, with the folks interested in the permit process or transferring schools for whatever reason. The next one is complaints against staff, 245 of the 1350 or so. I'm going to go through the top 10 until I get to number 10. Next, we have bullying, bullying, harassment, and intimidation with 153. The enrollment and registration process generates some interest, 149. Safety and security is a big issue with 102. Discipline-related contacts, 87, same as special education. We combine that with 504 related contacts. CONCAP is the 9th ranked category with 60. And finally, the campfire, which was by far our single biggest event last year in terms of activity in our office. What you see up there is 48. The 48 includes, those are individual cases where we can identify a specific person that contact us and log their name or we talk to them. There were at least 50 to 75 more calls and messages that were just left, but they can't be traced to a specific person. They just left a message commenting on that or walked in. There were also other offices and departments that received a number of calls on that category. But you can see where people are, why they're contacting us and their level of interest, all the way down to one contact for the calendar, early kinder, technology, et cetera. And finally, the constituent service contacts by school. Keep in mind that every contact is not a complaint. They call for a number of reasons. As expected, you see the large high schools with most of the contacts as it relates to schools. Johnson, McClatchy, Rosemont, Kennedy, and all the way down to every school was mentioned, although it was, for some reason, we had a contact for every school, all the way down to Leah Tata Floyd with only 2 contacts last year. That concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
We have 2 public comments, Kenya Martinez and Maria Rodriguez.
Good evening, board members. First, I'd like to say that I actually was hoping for a media report that would go into depth as to what actually was happening in the Office of Constituency. My work that I do with the Gifts Foundation in meeting with other parents who have experienced harassment, well, actually, their child has experienced harassment and bullying at certain schools, sites. We have heard horror stories about what has happened to them when they've gone to the Office of Constituency. And I would like to see some resolutions as far as what's happening within that office. I have a few questions. I would like to know, how are complaints solved regarding staff, against staff? Also, how is bullying and harassment solved? We do know about the bully prevention specialist who I've worked with, and I know that she was trying to roll out a pilot program at least 3 school sites. One of them was Sacramento New Tech, the other one was Sam Brennan Middle School, and I cannot remember the elementary school right now. I think it was John Cabrillo, yes. So, but I'd like to point out right now, I know at the district, because I've been coming to board meetings and getting to know everyone, that every school has autonomy, at least the principal has autonomy at their own school site. So even though bullying can be prevented, but because there's autonomy at each school site, things are handled differently. So I would like to have answers to those questions specifically. How are complaints against staff solved? And how is bullying and harassment solved for students when there's just a pilot program that's about to be implemented at 3 school sites?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent. I'm a 15-year constituent who likes to knit during school board meetings. And I didn't know there was such a department as this. But now that I do know, I want to make some comments on it. And that is, I appreciate this school board. I've been coming to school board meetings for a long time, and you're the most friendly school board I've ever had to stand in front of. And so one of my concerns is that as when I come up here, oftentimes I'll ask a question and there's no response. And I know that you guys can't respond, but sometimes you do respond and sometimes you don't. There's no response. There was one instance about a couple of months ago where I had a question about the budget, particularly is interest on bonds in the operating budget. I handed a very roughly scrambled note to Ms. Canfield, and I asked the board. I didn't get an answer. I actually went onto the SCUSD website and asked the question on that format and never got an answer. I talked to Kathy Morrison. She said to talk to Ms. Allen. It's the issue passed. It's not a big deal. But at one time, the school board did have on the website questions asked during the meeting and answers. And I suggest that might be a good thing to do. The other thing has to do with timing. I work really hard to keep my comments to 2 minutes. I always have a lot more to say. And it does bother me that the teachers union representatives often go over their time. I went to speak to them about it because I heard him say, the second vice president say that they are in their contract, they can have 15 minutes. And I said, if that's the case, you should. I found the point, it's section 18.12, and it says that they can have up to 15 minutes. Perhaps if they think they need more time than that, you guys should talk with them about giving them more time, because I think they have a lot to talk about. But it frustrates me that I work really hard. I've worked really hard to limit myself. And when I see other people go over, just so people know, you're not being mean, you're just being fair. And I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate those comments. And I like the idea of trying to figure out a mechanism for responding to questions. City Council actually does that. They have an opportunity to provide questions online and then responses. I think it's a wonderful goal for building out. Do we have any, no other public comments? We have a question from Member Morowski.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Brown. I wanted to ask about the training of the constituent services officer, ombudsman. Is that the correct term for the staff?
Ombudsperson.
Persons. Yeah, so can you explain, the training that they go through? I mean, there are so many issues, right? And you have to kind of reach out to different departments to find out information and get back to them. So is it really like a liaison, or is it really directing them to the correct place? And the other question I have is the distinction between like actually filing a complaint versus kind of lodging a complaint with constituent services. And so if you could just explain that distinction, how that's communicated to parents.
So there's several sort of doors you can enter through with a complaint. One being the Constituent Service Office, which has its own sort of categories that we can deal with. There's also the UCP process, which has very specified categories where you can file a UCP complaint. We do work with the Human Resources Department to sort of decipher through those and figure out where the various complaints should be handled. But most of the categories that you see here, where I indicated dealing with enrollment or discipline or those types of things, for the most part, they come through our office. When it comes to training, I'm the new person in the department. I've been there just 11 months. The ombudspersons that we have been there 22 years and I believe 11 years each. And so I learn from them every day. But it does help to have a well-rounded person in that role that knows how to navigate their way through the district office. They have points of contact at each school. We divide the district up between the two ombudspersons and myself. I have some schools assigned to me. And it certainly helps to understand education, understand how a school works, understand the district office, and who to touch to get something done. So I don't know about specific training, but we are, training ourselves every day.
Okay. Thank you. I am concerned about it because, over 1,350 contacts. This is a major way through which individuals are interacting with the district. So I do want to make sure that they're being served well with the accurate information in a timely manner. So is there any other information you can give me about kind of timeliness or kind of satisfaction of people getting resolution to complaints, or is any of that measured?
Sure. So the speed with which complaints or cases are solved varies. It actually varies month to month, depending on the volume and how much, volume is a big factor there, because there are slower months. But on average, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 5 days per case to resolve it. And some of that's what we know. Some of that is subject to human intervention, whether or not we close it out in time, or if we forget to close a case and therefore it affects your averages. So that's something that we plan on working on certainly in this coming year.
Okay, it sounds like that data is being collected then?
Yes.
In the system? Okay. That's great. I would ask that be included in the next report as well.
Point well taken.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Member Morowski, for your questions. Before Member Morowski and Member Garcia joined the board, this was a labor of love of the board as a whole. And I do want to thank Vice President Wu, because Vice President Wu had asked that this be an intentional initiative for many years. He looked at Natomas and their kind of best-in-class recognition for constituent service. He looked at Fresno, also best in class in many ways in their constituent service practices, and we didn't have the leadership in place to implement that until Superintendent Aguilar came, and he came and immediately started putting in place the database necessary, the staffing necessary, and the metrics necessary to be able to be more responsive to our parent community. I agree with Member Morowski. We need to know, based on the ticket, the time to resolution, the resolution, and some deeper details. But given this is less than a year of work, it is remarkable that you've made such gains in establishing this system, and I'm very excited to see what you do in the coming year and years to ensure that we have a systemized approach that recognizes the myriad need of our very diverse and I would say district that has for far too long not had a very clear system to go to when they have concerns or complaints. So this is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 10.3, approve the submission of a credentialed waiver application to the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. This will be an informational presentation from Conference to Action presented by Ms. McKern.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. With me is Tammy Mora, our credential auditor. So I want to just continue to introduce you to staff that's working hard to put things in place as we go. The PowerPoint's working. Thank you. The submission of this credential waiver that we're talking about today will be for current employees. So it's a way for our current employees to stay in their positions, to remain in their positions, but needing a little bit more time to meet some of the requirements. The Ed Code allows for districts to waive a portion of the requirements as I said, to give them an opportunity to complete. The CTC, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, does require that the waivers go through a public notice process at a regularly scheduled board meeting, and so that's what you're going to hear this evening. The areas requested for this particular waiver include ELA authorizations, the English language authorizations, BCLAD, which is the bilingual cross-cultural language authorizations, as well as some speech and language pathology and basic skills. These, the waivers will allow the teachers who are currently working towards meeting the requirements in these areas to remain in their positions working with students as they have been. To give a little sense of where we're at, we know the waivers as well as the declaration that you'll see next have been an annual item. So just to give a sense of areas in which we have needed to request waivers for some of our current employees. As you can see there, from the 2015-16 school year up until 19-20, what we're requesting in the areas. The increase in some career and technical education areas can be seen in there, as well as special education, ROTC, just some of the bigger ones. So for this, in order to keep the teachers in the classroom serving students, we recommend the approval of waivers.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No comment.
Do we have any board member questions on this item? Looks like we have none. Do we have a motion to move this from conference to action? Do we have a second? Student preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 10 point, sorry, now we have to take action. Do we have a motion to take action on this item? Second?
Second.
All the student preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Item 10.4, approving the declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 1920 calendar year. Again, Concy?
Good evening, Board President Ryan, members of the board, Superintendent Aguilar, Tammy Mora, and I, the Credential Auditor, are here to talk with you about the declaration of need. In order for the district throughout the school year to be able to apply for specific credentials and permits for teachers, we need to, in advance, come to the board at a regularly scheduled meeting to request what's called a declaration of need. So although we know we went through some significant reductions, and we are working as vacancies become available through attrition to bring those back, we also know that there are high-need positions in the district that are difficult to fill. And we know that some of those, based on our history, based on even skipping certain areas, that areas such as special education, areas within BCLAD, we know that there are things we are going to need in order to meet the needs of students. So CTC requires that we come to the board and do our best to predict our need for the upcoming year. Mm-hmm. So that's what this is. I will share that part of knowing that we have ongoing needs, like in special education, part of what the district has done and actually was successful in getting are 2 special education grants related, one special education grant, one related to math and sciences, which we know, again, are high needs. So local solutions, the teacher residency grant, just to show that we are trying to do additional things as opposed to coming and asking for a declaration that says that we can offer some waivers to help people get through some of these aspects. And of course, that's all in partnership with our IHE partners, specifically Sac State, on those whose support we appreciate. The declaration of need for the past few years, you can see looks like this, a lot within the ELA authorizations, so people needing a little more time, not coming to us with that authorization in place, but needing time once we hire them to go through a process and get them. Sometimes that's a one-year process, sometimes that's a multi-year process, and so with that, we're here to, of course, let you know we are continuing to review vacancies that arise from attrition that can be filled from our laid-off teachers, but we are also aware that we will have positions that we are not able to fill as high needs, especially in special education, and we need this to be able to help teachers who are interested in working in the district, who might just need a little extra in order to complete some of the requirements, time to do so. So staff recommends approval.
Do we have any public comment on
No
this
public
item?
comment.
Do we have any board member questions? Board Member Morowski?
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. McCarn. A quick question on what they do possess coming in. They don't have a credential, but they have some education and training towards the credential, or can you?
Yeah, so for like the English language authorizations, they have to meet, they have a base credential perhaps already, right? They might have a credential in whatever area that is, but there's an added level for working with English language learners that's needed, the English language authorization, the CLAD sometimes called. And specifically, if we have employees who perhaps are bilingual and have basic credential in one area, but they're willing to work in one of our bilingual programs, they need this additional level of certification. So we want to help and support them, already a valued employee perhaps, into getting into that area, but they would need something. This allows us to put them in while they work on it without being docked for being misassigned.
Oh, okay, okay. And there is some level of accountability for ensuring they become, qualified under the required authorizations.
Yeah, some of them have time limits and they have to show progress towards. So one of the things that Tammy does in her role is she's monitoring that. She is sending reminders to people, not only whose credentials may be expiring, but certainly watching those that we have on waivers or that we have through this process to ensure that they're meeting. Because if they're not, then we're not allowed to continue providing that additional time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to take this from conference to action? Second, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Item, moving to action. Do we have a motion to take action? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, and I forgot the student preferential vote.
Aye.
The motion carries. Item 10.5, approve the issuance of the NorCal Trade and Tech Notice of Violations. That will be presented tonight by Dr. Taylor, I believe.
Will actually be presented by Raul Bozio.
Okay.
And he'll be joined by Ed Sklar from Lozano Smith.
And we have no one here tonight from NorCal Trade and Tech to respond? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Good evening, President Ryan, Board of Education, Superintendent Aguilar. I am Raul Bozio, in-house counsel, and here with me is Ed Sklar, our charter counsel, specialist in charter school. Let's see. Okay, we've got our PowerPoint. We're here to discuss the issuance of NorCal Trade and Tech, a notice of violations. We'll briefly discuss the history of this charter school, the driving governance, the identification of the violations, and next steps. The district approved the charter school in January of 2018 for a term of 5 years, beginning July 1, 2018, expiring June 30, 2023. NorCal seeks to serve adult students over 18 years old and high school students under the provisions of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, the WIOA program. Ed Code Section 47607C provides that the authorizing entity may revoke the charter of the charter school if it finds, through a showing of substantial evidence, that the charter school either committed material violations, failed to meet or pursue any of the pupil outcomes identified in the charter, failed to meet generally accepted accounting principles, or engaged in fiscal mismanagement, and or violated any other provision of law. Also pursuant to the statute, the district is required to issue, to notify the charter prior to issuing the notice of violations in order to provide them an opportunity to respond. NorCal Trade and Tech was provided their notification of the notices on July 26th, so last Friday. And that was more than the 72-hour requirement under the code. The violations that the district has identified here are that NorCal has committed material violations of its charter, it's engaged in physical mismanagement, and a number of their practices constitute violations of the law, including but not limited to a number of violations identified above in sections 1 and 2, meaning that some of the same problems or issues fall under each of the 3 categories: physical mismanagement, also a violation of the charter, also a violation of the law, the labor code. Specifically, just to give you a brief overview of some of these particulars, and then I'll turn it over to Ed to get into any more detail and answer any more questions. Some of the major violations that fall under the categories include an apparent failure for the charter school to engage with the WIOA program, which was, again, part of its charter, and a provider of the WIOA program. In doing so, that allows the charter to do a number of things, including open a campus outside of the district's boundaries. There hasn't been any evidence that NorCal has actually engaged with the WIOA program provider. The fiscal mismanagement issues are significant. The ADA estimates that the charter provided appear to be drastically overstated, where they stated that they would have a 200 ADA. It would appear that the ADA is closer to 27 or 28 students. This is resulting in some major financial problems, requirement most likely to pay back the state a substantial amount of funds. There's also a problem with a grant that the charter received, a charter school grant that CDE, upon its audit of the grant, determined that the school was out of compliance with the grant requirements, including an apparent conflict of interest with regard to paying one of their board members for services using those grant funds. Again, that's one of the noticed violations that falls under various categories: violation of the law, conflict of interest, physical mismanagement, and not complying with their grant requirements, and the like. And lastly, again, another fiscal issue is that due to these problems with ADA and the like, they've fallen behind significantly on their payroll, and their CalSTRS reporting requirements are drastically behind.
Thank you, Board.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Sklar to answer any specifics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bazio. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Okay, it looks like we have a couple board member comments and questions. Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Ryan. This is very disappointing. I was, maybe for Raul and for you, can you, it wasn't too long ago, can you remind me when we approved this charter?
It was January 18th, 2018.
Yeah, so it
About a year
wasn't
and a
too
half,
long
yeah.
ago. So can you tell us a little bit about like what the process is? Like once we approved the charter, did we work with them closely? How did we come up upon these violations?
Well, I'll turn it over to Ed to talk about. He has probably more of the history of our former charter director, Mr. Kramer, who was working closely with the charter.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ed Sklar, and I'm charter school counsel for this board. Obviously, Jack Kramer, the former charter overseer, would have the most intimate knowledge in regard to the work he did with NorCal. But Jack had kept me apprised, or Mr. Kramer kept me apprised as to his and staff's oversight of the charter school throughout the 1 year that they've been in operation. And basically, the district was doing what it's supposed to do, right? The district's obligation as the charter authorizer is to provide oversight to make sure that the charter is in compliance with the law, that they're in compliance with their own charter, and that they are, and to oversee the finances and make sure that they're fiscally sound. So in doing all of those things, these are not all of the concerns that Mr. Kramer had and addressed with NorCal throughout the year, but these were, you only have so much paper and so much space that you can fit in a notice of violations. These were what we saw, particularly the fiscal mismanagement, as the most egregious concerns that he had been monitoring throughout the year.
But these are violations that, just to reiterate, these are violations that we, the district, found, not a third party coming to us and telling us that these violations were happening, correct?
That's correct. There is a specific violation, or there is a specific concern that's raised in the notice of violations about the withdrawal of the grant from the state, and these were matters that the state had raised, those specific issues.
Yeah.
But in regard to the big picture fiscal mismanagement issues, that was what the district was overseeing and had discovered.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Like I said, just very disappointing when this charter came to us. I had high hopes. This is a trade that many of our adults need, and I really had high hopes that they would succeed. So, it's very disappointing.
Thank you, Board Member Pritchett. Board Member Minnick.
Thank you. I agree with Member Pritchett. I was really excited about this. And I still believe that the potential for a project like this could be a game changer for a lot of people. And so I was extremely disappointed when I read this report. And one thing stood out for me was this line that said, they had operated in violation of its charter and the law and demonstrated indifference to the district and numerous other state agencies, including Department of Education, the state teachers retirement system. It was kind of shocking that I felt like these folks who I had so much faith in kind of disregarded the system, and that's frustrating. And I know we have some response from them on some of the concerns, but I just found I was very upset reading this report. My question then, so I know that what we're essentially doing tonight is if we move on this, we're voting to let them know that these are the issues and give them a timeline to correct all of them or get revoked. My question then for you is, does this need to then come back to us to vote again, or are we authorizing you to, let this information, get this information to them, give them a timeline, and then if they're not able to correct that, we're done with it. We don't have to bring this back for another presentation.
Yeah, that's a really good question and allows me to explain somewhat the process.
Cool.
If this will come back to this board. So fortunately or unfortunately, the state legislature did not make it easy to revoke a charter, right? Because they don't want to make it easy to close down a school. Once, you're exactly right that tonight is really just issuing notice to them and allowing them time to provide a written response to either refute or just simply respond to how they have remedied the violations raised in tonight's notice of violations. We're giving them 30 days to do that. Once the district staff receives the response, they'll review it and come back to this board to report out as to whether we should take the next step, which is a notice of intent to revoke and to set a public hearing for revocation. So then we would have to ask this board to issue that. Then we would have if we continue down that road, have a public hearing on revocation, and then this board would be asked to issue a written decision as to, if they were going to revoke, to issue a written decision to revoke. So a several-step process that is going to come back in front to this board a couple more times.
And so then a follow-up to that then, does that mean then in the meantime, they could potentially have staff people that aren't getting paid, they're not meeting students' needs, all these things are continuing until we've gotten to that third stage or whatever it is?
That's correct. They have the right to continue to operate and operate as they can until.
And I guess theoretically, those staff people have the right to stop showing up to work, but the fact is they entered into a contract and now they're not getting paid.
That's correct. And in all candor, I don't know what the latest status is, but we have not heard anything that they have found any type of funding to pay their payroll, cover their payroll, make the STRS contributions.
So, and since it seems like, this tells me that knowing that there's this long process. And I appreciate that there's a lot of hurdles to revoke a charter because, we don't want to willy-nilly, pull the rug out from under students. But knowing that this process so long, it seems as though time is of the essence for us to act on this tonight so that we can get this process moving so that they either can fix this problem or they can, wrap up.
That's my recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to point out a couple things. I am greatly concerned by the egregious level of violations and the impact on students. When this charter came before the board, I regrettably did not vote for this charter. And it was because after meeting with these individuals, meeting with the staff to ask follow-up questions, our staff did their due diligence and in fact said that they had grave concerns. I said that reading that application page to page, cover to cover, that it was the worst application I had ever seen for a charter. The vision was there, but the ability to execute and the fiduciary responsibility was a wing and a prayer. And this is what we're seeing, both with the revocation of the WIO state funding and the financial dilemma that they find themselves in. And what makes me very sad about this is we now have to go through a process whereby we know that students and employees are not being served as we try to work the process to lawfully revoke a charter. And I think what's sad about this further is that we have good schools that go through a very rigorous process to be assessed for the ability to have their charter approved. And this flies in the face of all of that work. Once again, I am incredibly disturbed, and it is the impact on students that will sit with me the most as we wait for a final resolution to this issue. Board Member Morowski.
Thank you. It's obviously a very disturbing situation. I'm wondering what kind of, is there a prevention and early intervention warning system that, or did this just all go on and then we found out all of these things were happening? I mean, is there, what went wrong? Was there a way to work?
I mean, we have to realize this charter school has only literally been in operation for one school year.
Yeah.
And so the district staff was very proactive in doing its oversight duties in regard to the real dire straits that they're in now in regard to the fiscal mismanagement and their fiscal state. That became apparent around March, April time, and the district staff was very diligent. So the school year moves fast. These charter school matters move fast. They were just approved, so we're not going to close them down, or we're not going to have this process in the first 6 months.
That's why.
Now is pretty quick, actually, to be bringing a notice of violations after a year of operation, or less than a year of operation. So I think the district and district staff was rightfully ahead of this, and here we are. It's been a pretty quick process.
Yeah, it sounds like a failure to just get off the ground, really.
Yeah, I would agree. They didn't have the people coming through the door in regard to these measuring student outcomes. You can read the response that you got from the charter school tonight, and it was, we were there, but then they fell flat. In regard to professional development, we were there, and they fell flat. You're right, they never really got off the ground.
Okay, thank you.
The vision was bigger than the ability to execute.
Right.
Okay, thank you. With that, do we have a motion to take this from conference to action? Second? Second. Okay, a board member, student preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Do we have a motion to take action on this item? Do we have a second? Student board member preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to 11.0, the consent agenda. We do have one modification to the consent agenda. We are going to be making a modification to item 11.1.a, approval of grants, entitlements, and other income agreements. We are actually going to be moving the contract approval and renewal for the Lozano-Smith contract to the August 15th board meeting to allow for all of our board meeting members to be present for that vote. Do we have an agreement to the modified agenda? We have a motion from Member Morowski. We have a second from Board Member Wu. Do we have a student preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item 12.0, business and financial information reports. Receive business and information financial reports, including the enrollment and attendance report. And it looks like we don't have Cecile Nunley here tonight to respond to that. Cecile, I hope everything's okay. Item 13.0,
President
future
Ryan.
board member dates and locations. Yes.
President Ryan, if I can just make a notation under grants and the superintendent's office. There is a set of 3 grants that we received, and we hope to bring back to the Board of Education a staff presentation of the Harvard Public Education Leadership Project, as well as the Labor Management Summer Institute that staff and some board members also participated in. And so I just wanted to make a notation that,
We'll have presentations on both those grants.
yeah, on those grants. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I also want to note that we will have a budget update presentation at the next board meeting. So I'm hopeful that you'll help get the word out with community members as well as an enrollment staffing update. With that, our future board member dates, meeting dates and locations will be August 15th, 4:30 closed session with actually a 6 p.m. open session. If you can please make an amendment to that item. It's reading as 6:30 right now. And we are going to adjourn back to closed session. Thank you.